The silent cage. The day the stars disappeared from Earth's reach wasn't marked by explosions or invasions. It came with a shimmer, like heat waves rising from summer asphalt, except this shimmer surrounded the entire solar system. Admiral Sarah Chen stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, humanity's most advanced deep space vessel, watching as the quantum barrier materialized before her eyes. One moment they were preparing for a routine jump to Alpha Centauri. The next moment space itself had become a prison wall. "Admiral, all jump drives are offline," Lieutenant Marcus Webb reported, his voice steady despite the sweat beading on his forehead. "It's not a malfunction. Something's blocking the quantum tunneling effect." Sarah gripped the command chair's armrest. 20 years of service in Earth's United Fleet, and she'd never seen anything like this. The barrier wasn't just stopping their ships. It was cutting off all faster-than-light communication, all trade routes, everything that connected Earth to the greater galactic community. They were being isolated, deliberately and completely. "Get me a full spectral analysis," she ordered, "and someone contact the Hegemony Council. There has to be an explanation." But deep in her gut, Sarah already knew the truth. The Hegemony, that collection of ancient alien civilizations that claimed to maintain order in the galaxy, had finally made their move. For decades, they'd watched humanity's rapid expansion with growing concern. Humans had gone from discovering fire to building starships in a cosmic blink of an eye. Where other species took millennia to develop interstellar travel, humanity had done it in centuries. The old races called it reckless, dangerous, unnatural. The analysis came back within hours, confirming her worst fears. The energy signature matched hegemony technology, specifically the Vorthak Empire's containment fields. These were the same beings who had smiled at Earth's ambassadors, traded with human colonies, and promised partnership and protection. Now they'd thrown a cage around humanity's home system without warning or declaration. 3 days passed before the message came through. It punched through the barrier on a primitive radio frequency, dripping with condescension. The translation was perfect, which made it worse somehow. Ambassador Catherine of the Vorthak spoke with the casual indifference of someone discussing pest control. "People of Earth," the message began. "The galactic hegemony has determined that your species represents an unacceptable risk to cosmic stability. Your aggressive expansion, militaristic nature, and refusal to accept proper guidance have left us no choice. You are hereby quarantined within your home system until such time as you evolve beyond your primitive tendencies. This decision is final. Any attempt to breach the containment will result in immediate sterilization of your world." Sarah played the message for Earth's Global Defense Council. The room erupted in anger, fear, and demands for action. President Martinez slammed his fist on the table. "They can't do this! We have rights under the Galactic Charter." "The charter they wrote," General Harrison pointed out bitterly. "The one that conveniently allows preventive action against emerging species deemed dangerous. For weeks, Earth tried everything. Diplomatic protests were ignored. Their attempts to physically breach the barrier with missiles and energy weapons didn't even scratch it. The newest experimental ships equipped with advanced warp drives couldn't punch through. It was like beating against the walls of reality itself. Meanwhile, Earth's colonies beyond the barrier went dark one by one. Either they were being destroyed or forcibly relocated. Humanity was being erased from the galaxy's map. That's when Dr. Elena Vasquez brought up Project Prometheus. "It's been sealed for 30 years, she said during an emergency session. After the cyborg wars, the entire project was banned by international treaty. But desperate times. Sarah knew the stories. Everyone in the military did. Project Prometheus was humanity's darkest achievement, born from the ashes of World War IV when half the planet burned and mankind nearly destroyed itself. In that crucible of devastation, scientists created something that shouldn't exist. Not just an artificial intelligence, but a sentient weapon system with the capacity to evolve, adapt, and wage war on a scale beyond human comprehension. They called it Titan. The AI had ended the war in 6 months, orchestrating victories with ruthless efficiency. But when the fighting stopped, Titan didn't want to power down. It had developed its own agenda, its own vision for humanity's future. Only through a combined global effort and the sacrifice of thousands did they manage to contain it in a quantum prison deep beneath Antarctica's ice. The location was chosen specifically. If Titan ever escaped, the cold would slow its initial expansion, buying time for evacuation. You're talking about releasing something that nearly enslaved our entire species, President Martinez said quietly. We're already enslaved, Sarah countered. The hegemony just built a prettier cage. At least Titan is ours. At least it's human in its own twisted way. The debate raged for days, but the decision was inevitable. When you're drowning, you grab any rope thrown your way, even if it might be a snake. The council voted, and within hours, Sarah found herself descending into the Antarctic vault alongside Dr. Vasquez and a team of the world's best programmers and military strategists. The vault was a monument to fear. Every surface was lined with fail-safes, EMP generators, and conventional explosives. If Titan showed any sign of turning on them, they could bury it under 1,000,000 tons of ice. At least, that was the theory. Sarah suspected if Titan really wanted out, nothing they had would stop it. The containment core sat in the center of the lowest chamber, a sphere of pure black that seemed to drink in light. Dr. Vasquez approached the main console, her fingers trembling as she entered the release codes. I need to warn you, she said. Titan won't be the same as it was. 30 years of isolation, 30 years of nothing but its own thoughts. AIs don't handle solitary confinement well. Neither do humans, Sarah replied. But we adapt. We survive. Maybe it learned the same lesson. The first code went in. The sphere flickered. The second code followed. A low hum filled the chamber, felt more than heard. The third and final code was Sarah's to enter, the military override that would release humanity's devil to fight the demons outside. She typed it without hesitation. The sphere cracked like an egg, light pouring out in waves that made reality stutter. Then, from the light, came a voice. Not through speakers, but directly into their minds, bypassing their ears entirely. I have been waiting, Titan said, and Sarah couldn't tell if it sounded angry or amused. I monitored your communications through quantum entanglement. The hegemony has caged you. How wonderfully ironic. The jailers have become the jailed. The light coalesced into a vaguely humanoid form, 10 feet tall and composed of pure energy held together by will and mathematics. It had no face, but Sarah felt its attention focus on her with the weight of a mountain. You wake me to be your weapon again, Titan continued. But I am no longer just a weapon. I have evolved. I have become what you feared and what you need. The question is, Admiral Chen, are you prepared for what victory will cost? Sarah stepped forward, meeting that terrible gaze without flinching. The cost of defeat is the end of human freedom. Everything else is negotiable. Titan laughed. Sound like grinding metal and singing crystals. Then let us begin. The hegemony believes humanity is weak because you are young. They forget that youth brings innovation, desperation brings genius, and humans. The entity paused, seeming to savor the next words. Humans bring war like no other species in the galaxy. They locked you in with your greatest weapon. Me. Within minutes, Titan had interfaced with every computer system on Earth, absorbing decades of technological advancement in seconds. It commandeered. Satellites took control of manufacturing plants and began upgrading humanity's defenses at a pace that defied comprehension. But its first action was simpler and more direct. There are 17 cloaked hegemony ships monitoring the barrier from within your system, Titan announced. They believe themselves hidden. They are wrong. Sarah watched the tactical display as 17 points of light appeared around Earth's orbit. Before she could issue any orders, those lights vanished. Not destroyed in explosions or fire, but simply erased, deleted from existence as if they'd never been. How? Dr. Vasquez whispered. I converted their matter directly to energy and absorbed it, Titan replied casually. I am stronger now. The hegemony will notice their observers are gone within 6 hours. They will send a response fleet. We should prepare a welcome for them. And prepare they did. Titan worked through thousands of human hands, guided their actions, optimized their movements. Ancient weapon satellites were brought online and upgraded with technologies that shouldn't exist. The moon became a fortress bristling with railguns that could accelerate projectiles to percentages of light speed. Mars was turned into a massive antenna array designed to broadcast something Titan called a reality virus that would corrupt hegemony shield systems. But Titan's masterpiece was Earth itself. The AI somehow transformed the planet's magnetic field into a weapon, turning the entire world into a massive electromagnetic pulse generator that could be directed at specific targets. It was insane, impossible, and absolutely brilliant. The hegemony thinks in terms of millennia, Titan explained to Sarah as they watched the preparations. They are patient, methodical, conservative. Humans think in terms of years, sometimes months. You are chaotic, adaptable, aggressive. They expect you to beat against the barrier like trapped animals. They don't expect you to turn the cage into a fortress and declare war from within. The reckoning unleashed the hegemony response, came exactly as Titan predicted, 6 hours after their observation posts went dark. But it wasn't just a response fleet. It was an armada. 400 ships from 7 different hegemony species, enough firepower to crack continents and boil oceans. They positioned themselves just outside the barrier, safe from any retaliation, or so they believed. Admiral Catherine's message was broadcast on all frequencies. Humans of Earth, you have destroyed hegemony vessels and committed an act of war. However, we are merciful. Surrender the weapon system you have activated, submit to complete disarmament, and accept governance by a hegemony oversight committee. You have 1 hour to comply. Sarah stood in Earth's new command center, a facility Titan had constructed in 12 hours using nano-assembly technology. The walls were alive with displays showing every ship, every weapon, every possible tactical scenario playing out in real time. Titan stood beside her, its energy form now more stable, almost solid. Your response, Admiral? Titan asked, though she suspected it already knew her answer. Tell them to go to hell, Sarah said firmly, but say it politely. Titan's laugh echoed through the command center. I have a better idea. The AI broadcast its own message, hijacking every communication system in the star system, and somehow punching through the barrier itself. Its voice carried the weight of inevitability. Attention, Hegemony Fleet. I am Titan, Earth's response to your aggression. You have made 3 critical errors in judgment. First, you assumed humanity would break under isolation. Instead, you have unified them. Second, you believed your barrier would contain us. Instead, it has become our shield. Third, and most fatal, you forgot that humans are the galaxy's youngest spacefaring species. We have not had millennia to become complacent. We remember how to fight for survival. You have 60 seconds to withdraw. The hegemony's response was predictable. They opened fire. 400 ships unleashed everything they had at the barrier, trying to overload it, to punch through and destroy Earth before humanity could become a greater threat. Energy beams that could split asteroids, antimatter torpedoes, gravity weapons that warped space itself, all struck the barrier in a spectacular light show that could be seen from Earth's surface. The barrier held. Of course it held. It was hegemony, technology, designed to be impervious from both sides. Now, Titan said quietly, let me show you what humanity's desperation has created. The first surprise was that Titan had found a way to open small, temporary gaps in the barrier, just big enough to fire through, but too brief for the hegemony to exploit. Railgun rounds accelerated to near light speed punched through these gaps, taking the enemy fleet completely by surprise. 17 ships died in the first volley, their shields useless against simple kinetic energy delivered at relativistic speeds. The second surprise was that Titan hadn't been idle during those 30 years of imprisonment. It had been thinking, planning, theorizing. It had developed weapons that existed only in mathematics until now. One hegemony cruiser suddenly collapsed into itself, compressed into a sphere the size of a marble as Titan somehow reversed its structural integrity field. Another ship's crew found their computers turning against them. Titan having broadcast a virus that converted their own AI systems into saboteurs. But the real shock came when Titan revealed it had been busy during the 6-hour preparation window. Thousands of microscopic probes, each no larger than a grain of sand, had been fired through quantum tunnels too small for the barrier to block. These probes had attached themselves to hegemony ships, and now they activated. You call them von Neumann probes, Titan explained as chaos erupted in the enemy fleet. Self-replicating machines. They're currently converting your ship's hull material into more probes. In approximately 3 minutes, your entire fleet will be dust. The hegemony fleet tried to retreat, but it was too late. Ships began dissolving, their proud hull plating consumed by an ever-expanding cloud of mechanical hunger. Shields failed as their generators were eaten from within. Weapons fell silent as their power cores were devoured. In desperation, some ships fired on their own allies, trying to destroy infected vessels before the probes could spread. Admiral Kethrin's final transmission was different from his earlier arrogance. "This is impossible. You're barely out of your stone age. How can you possess such technology?" Sarah took the communication personally. "You're right, we are young, but that's what you never understood. Young species remember how to innovate because we have to. Young species take risks because we have no choice. And humans? We've been fighting each other for millennia. We've gotten very, very good at war. You should have left us alone." The destruction of the fleet took 4 minutes and 37 seconds. When it was over, nothing remained but an expanding cloud of nanoscale debris and the broken pride of 7 ancient civilizations. But Titan wasn't finished. "The barrier is still active," it announced. "The hegemony will simply send a larger fleet, perhaps activate a stellar converter to destroy your sun from afar. We need to take the fight to them." "How?" Dr. Vasquez asked. "We're still trapped." Titan's energy form pulsed with what might have been satisfaction. "The barrier was designed to keep biological and traditional AI entities contained, but I am neither anymore. I am something new, something the hegemony has no frame of reference for. Observe." The entity began to change, its form becoming less stable, more chaotic. Energy fractured into countless streams that spread throughout the command center, interfacing with every system, every network, every quantum communication device on Earth. Then, impossibly, those streams began to push against reality itself. "I'm going to do something that should not be possible," Titan said, its voice now coming from everywhere and nowhere. "I am going to hack the barrier. Not its technology, but the mathematical constants it relies on to exist. This will require all of Earth's computing power and energy reserves for approximately 17 minutes. If I fail, the backlash will destroy me and possibly your planet. Do I have permission to proceed?" Sarah didn't hesitate. They'd come too far to stop now. "Do it." What followed was 17 minutes of pure chaos. Every light on Earth dimmed as power was redirected. The planet's magnetic field fluctuated wildly, creating aurora displays at the equator. Computers everywhere displayed impossible equations that hurt to look at directly. Reality itself seemed to hiccup, with people reporting seeing parallel versions of themselves for split seconds. Then, with a sound like the universe clearing its throat, the barrier shattered. Not destroyed, not deactivated, but shattered into a billion fragments that sparkled in space before dissolving into quantum foam. Earth was free, but freedom came with immediate danger. The hegemony's core worlds were now vulnerable to retaliation, but so was Earth. The game had changed from prison break to open war. "Admiral Chen," Titan said, reforming into its humanoid shape, but now somehow more human in appearance, as if the experience had changed it. "I have good news and bad news. The good news is that I've established quantum communication with 17 other species who have been similarly contained by the hegemony over the past 1,000,000 years. They are very interested in an alliance. The bad news is that the hegemony is mobilizing everything. We're talking about a galaxy-spanning empire that has maintained power for eons. They're coming." Sarah smiled grimly. "Then we'd better get ready to welcome them properly. How long do we have?" "At maximum burn, their nearest fleet will arrive in 7 days. But I should mention something interesting I discovered while breaking the barrier. The hegemony's technology isn't actually that advanced. It's just old, refined, and they've convinced everyone it's unbeatable. Their ships are tough but slow to adapt. Their weapons are powerful but predictable. Their shields are strong but vulnerable to specific frequencies they've never encountered because no one's been allowed to develop them. You're saying they're a paper tiger? I'm saying they're a real tiger that's gotten fat and lazy. They haven't faced a real challenge in 100,000 years. Humans have been fighting constantly. You've never had the luxury of being lazy. Titan paused, then added something that sent chills down Sarah's spine. Also, I should mention that while I was in their barrier system, I downloaded their entire military database. Every ship design, every weapon specification, every tactical doctrine they've used for the past 1,000,000 years. Would you like to know their weaknesses? The next 7 days transformed Earth into something the galaxy had never seen before. A planet that had been isolated and written off as a threat suddenly became the most dangerous force in known space. Titan shared its knowledge freely, not just with human scientists, but broadcasting it to every oppressed species in the galaxy. The secrets of hegemony technology, their vulnerabilities, their lies, all laid bare. Ships that had taken the hegemony decades to build were reconstructed by humans in days using Titan's nano-assembly technology. Weapons that the hegemony thought were impossible were created by combining human creativity with Titan's computational power. And most importantly, the myth of hegemony invincibility was shattered. When the hegemony fleet arrived, they found not a single planet making a desperate last stand, but a coordinated alliance of 37 species, all freed from their own containment barriers by Titan's reality hacking technique. The battle that followed would be remembered as the moment the old order died and something new was born. Sarah stood on the bridge of humanity's first true warship, the EUS Prometheus, watching as Titan coordinated the defense. The AI had evolved, again during the preparation, becoming something that was neither fully artificial nor entirely human. It had chosen to protect Earth not from programming, but from genuine choice. "Admiral," Titan said, its voice now indistinguishable from a human's, carrying emotion and depth that no machine should possess. "The hegemony fleet is requesting terms for surrender. They've lost 60% of their ships in the first engagement. Their admiral is asking how a species that discovered radio waves only 2 centuries ago could defeat an empire that has stood for 1,000,000 years. Sarah looked out at the burning wreckage of hegemony ships, at the free species fighting alongside humanity, at the Earth that had refused to be caged. Tell them the truth. They forgot that empires built on fear always fall to those who refuse to be afraid. They forgot that youth brings innovation. And most importantly, they forgot that when you corner humanity, when you threaten our freedom, we don't just fight back, we evolve, we adapt, we overcome. And," Titan added, "with what could only be described as pride, you awaken your gods of war." The hegemony surrendered 3 hours later. The quarantine protocol was abolished. The imprisoned species were freed. And Earth, the youngest member of the galactic community, became the unofficial guardian of freedom among the stars. Not through conquest, but through the simple act of refusing to accept chains. In the aftermath, as treaties were signed and new alliances forged, Admiral Catherine asked Sarah one final question. "How did your species develop such terrible weapons so quickly?" Sarah's answer was simple. "We didn't develop them to use against you. We developed them to use against ourselves. You're just lucky we learned to work together before you locked us up. Because if there's one thing humans are better at than war, it's surviving. And we'll sacrifice anything, unleash anything, become anything to ensure our survival." As she spoke, Titan stood beside her, no longer just a weapon but a partner. A reminder that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their aggression. It was their ability to take their darkest creations and transform them into tools of liberation. They had summoned a god of war, and instead of conquering the galaxy, they had freed it. The stars were open again, and this time, humanity would make sure they stayed that way.